Now there's only a couple things you need to do to be a phenomenal chipper, to really just to make this easy. Number one, you need to keep your body and your arms working together. If I do that correctly, you can see that this green band stays under my arm. Now if my arms get separated from my body, you can see that flies out. I'm going to show you this drill here in a second. Now number two, we have to make sure that we don't get stuck underneath. If my club starts to tip underneath, the right side of my body starts to fall down, I'm gonna get those chunks, or I'm gonna get those drop kicks that just kind of fly across the green. So once I show you this method, it's gonna be really easy. You're gonna feel super confident, and you're gonna feel like any chip or pitch that you have, you're really just gonna be able to knock it close and make clean, solid contact. All right, so that almost never happens. I promise that was on the first take. Usually it doesn't work out that good, but let me show you a couple things here with this rubber band. So this is a great drill. Chris Hunsucker, one of our top speed golf certified instructors, showed me this. I didn't have one of these bands, and I put it off for almost a year. I never tried this drill out because I never ordered one of these. And don't do what I did. If you don't already have one of these little TheraBands, use any kind of band that you have, or if you don't have one, just order one, because this is the best chipping drill. It is phenomenal at how good it helps you to not only stay connected, but also to keep that club from dropping underneath. Now, the real goal with this is to make sure that you make clean contact with the ground. That's what chipping really is. Anything else we do is just to come down, make contact with the ground at the right spot, and be very consistent with that. So what I've done is I've wrapped this around the club face. I'm gonna stick the other end under my armpit. So what I'll do is I'll grab the club with my left hand, I'll stick it with my right hand under my armpit. I get that question all the time from people I've showed this drill to. And what I'm working on here is I'm making sure my body keeps on rotating and turns into my left arm. So you can imagine here, the upper part of my left arm, this bone here, the bicep of my arm, my humerus bone here is really attached across my body. It's cinched in against my left pec, and that cinched in feeling there is gonna pinch this rubber band. Now, if I rotate my body and I keep my knees moving, so notice how my legs and my knees are gonna move through this shot, I can turn into this left arm and I'm very connected. You hear all great chippers and pitchers talk about how connected they are. This is what they mean. This is the part that's connected. And that allows them to keep that face very, very square and very consistent so that you can hit the ground in the same spot over and over again. You don't have to worry about chunking and thinning if you're doing this. So grab this rubber band, stick it underneath your arm. If you don't have a rubber band, you can use a glove, but I don't like that nearly as much because it doesn't give you that feedback of the connection. You can hit some easy chips, and I'll just go ahead and knock one 10 feet here or so, just showing you how you can actually hit them with a rubber band. It's not the best because it's gonna kind of mess up the contact there, but you get the idea. The main thing is that I want to keep a decent amount of tension here. That way, if my body stops, if my legs stop moving, if my hips stop moving, and I just arm it, it flies out. That's what I see daggone near every player. I would say pretty much 100% of players that are struggling to get that consistent contact are doing that motion. Let me give you a couple keys that make you want to do this motion. So sometimes players will put the ball too far back in their stance, they'll have too much forward shaft lean, and that'll get them into this kind of very descending blow. Now when that happens, the body stops, it stands up. A lot of times you'll lose your posture, and then you're gonna throw the hands and arms to keep from burying this club in the ground. Now if you did that, you'll see how you get this chicken wing action, and that chicken wing is actually good for that movement, because if I didn't do the chicken wing, I would go ahead and stay connected here, I would chop down into it, and I just cold chunk it. Now when you use that rubber band, you're automatically gonna feel where you need to play the ball position, how you need to come into contact to keep that rubber band and brush the turf and come to that finish. So there's really no way to cheat it. You put that rubber band under your arm, it gets your ball position better, it gets your angle of attack better, it keeps your connection, it keeps you brushing the ground in the same spot. I mean, it's really just a daggone good drill. If you're curious, I'm gonna go ahead and show you a couple other pieces with that I'd recommend, just to save you a little bit of time. I like to think of my ball position in relationship to my left foot. So if my stance is very narrow like this, I'm going to open my stance slightly. I like to have my toes slightly ahead. That helps you to pivot in front and again keep that connection here. And I want to play the ball position kind of off my left heel. Now if I had a little wider stance, again that ball position would still be somewhere kind of toward my left heel. If I have a narrow stance, it's toward my left heel. Some people will do it in relationship to their right foot, and I don't think that's right. Because if your stance is narrow, yes, this ball position is on my right foot. But if I get my stance a little wider and I play it on my right foot, now I'm chopping down into it. And that's because our weight is left. Since our weight is left, our weight is over our left foot, we should play our ball position in relationship to our left foot. So that's piece number one. Stick that rubber band, stick whatever kind of band you have under your armpit, make some swings. I could go into a ton of detail about every little tiny thing that's happening there, but I'll be honest with you. You wrap that rubber band around, you practice for a couple days like that for just 15, 20 shots, you're gonna get the feeling right away of what the best chippers in the world are feeling and how they're moving the body, how they're staying connected. So I'm gonna wrap this rubber band around the club head again, and now we're gonna talk about getting stuck under. This is another really big one that a lot of players struggle with. This is the second piece to this chipping method that's gonna make it really easy to hit it solid. So when I get stuck under, what's happening there is when I take my backswing, my club goes a little too much to the inside. In my downswing, my right side of my body drops. And you can see how this gets the club closer to the ground, and it gets it wanting to ground out back here. Now that's an exaggeration, but if I do too much of that, club to the inside, ground out, boom, that's a chunk. Now if I'm lucky enough to miss the ground and not chunk it, now the club's working back up into the ball and you thin it across the green. So really the chunk shot and the thin shot are the same thing. Everything's falling right, falling underneath. This rubber band is also awesome for that, because what it does is when I make my backswing, because there's a little bit of tension here, I'm typically going to keep this club head outside of my hands and arms. So as I make this backswing when I'm looking from down the line, you're going to see how this club head is not in here, it's staying a little bit out. And then from there, all I need to do is keep my body left and rotate through to the finish. Now when I get to the finish, I want to make sure my chest is over my hips and everything is rotated on through. What I don't want to do is go here, fall this way, and not finish, so fall to the right. A great little tip for that is when you set up, go ahead and set up with your spine a little bit farther forward, or almost the opposite of what you would do in your full swing. Now we know from the Top Speed Golf system that we have to have a little spine tilt away in the full swing. In the short game, it's actually the opposite of that. I want to have my spine basically straight up and down so that I can keep that low point very consistent. Now the most common question I get there is, why do I have to have it different for the full swing and the short game? Well, in the short game, it's all about consistency and hitting one point. You don't have to create any power. We would do it the same way in the full swing if we never had to hit it over 150 yards. This is the most consistent way of doing it. But unfortunately, golf requires some power. You have to get behind the golf ball to really create a lot of power. When we're close to the green, we don't need power. We just need it to be consistent. So I'm going to set up with my upper body a little bit more to the left. I'm going to visualize this rubber band staying connected, club heads outside, and then I'm just going to rotate on through. Now if I do that, things just get super, super easy here. Let's go ahead and try another one out. There we go, 2 in a row, both within 1.5 feet of the hole. Not gonna do much better than that. All right, so we've seen how this is really good for getting you super consistent right around the greens. But what about when you get a little farther from the green? How in the heck do the pros make it look so easy when they're 40, 60, or 80 yards away? How do you control your distance to get it right on the money? Well, there's actually a system that you can follow that's gonna train you how to do that. Now, a lot of people are gonna refer to that as the clock system. Now, that's a great name for it, but it's actually more to this. It's less about where you stop your hands and arms and more about a specific rhythm, tempo, and timing that you have. I'm gonna play a preview of a video here in a second that's gonna go over the clock system with you. All you need to do is go ahead and click the card that pops up on your screen or the link down below in the description. And I'm gonna share with you those secrets on getting the right timing so that you can make that to happen. So now that you've not only got your short game, your chipping working well close to the green, now we're going to take it out a little farther from the green. So anywhere within 100 yards, you're going to be very confident. Let's go ahead and get started. I used to actually practice a lot in high school. This is one of my favorite things to do. I had a strip mowed down the back of my yard where I took the lawnmower. My parents probably hated this because I mowed it down to like ½ inch turf in the back of the yard because we lived on a farm. And I would set buckets or towels along this, and I would try to set them at those distances that I knew. And maybe I knew my 56 degree went right at 65 yards. I'd set a bucket 65 yards away, and I would go ahead and do my 9 o'clock swing, and I would try to fly it right into the bucket. And get to where I could tell for sure if I was going to be a couple yards short or a couple yards long, just because it gets so ingrained when you get the rhythm and the finish the same every time. So we can use different length backswings to control the distance of our wedge shots. So for example, if we imagine that I'm a clock and 6 o'clock is directly down, my wedge would be at 6 o'clock, or my arms would be at 6 o'clock, I can go back to a 7:30 swing and I can have the same finish and hit at a certain distance, or I can go back to 9 or 10:30 and swing through to the same distance, and that's going to control, or the same finish point, and that's going to control the distance that my wedge shots are going to fly in the air. And I've got to keep that rhythm and that tempo very, very consistent. If I vary my tempos, I can hit at all kinds of different distances. So for example, I could have a real quick tempo 7:30 swing and probably hit this 90 yards. I could have a, maybe not really that far, probably 50 or 60 yards. I could have a very slow tempo 7:30 swing and hit half that distance. So I've got to get my distance the same. I've got to get my rhythm the same. That's the real key to it. And the second piece on there